There's lots of things about the squat that can make it a very overwhelming lift. In fact, when you talk about powerlifting, most people believe that between the squat, bench, and deadlift, the squat is the king of all lifts. Everybody knows what the squat is. You hold the bar on your back, you drop your hips down and bring them back up. Now, sounds simple, but it's not. We've had several people in history squat 7, 8, 9, 1,000, more than 1,000. It's an impressive lift, and it's tremendously great for leg hypertrophy, leg growth. If you're not a powerlifter watching this video, you might want to focus, because even if you're a bodybuilder, a strongman, or just a common person who loves muscle fitness, everybody should know how to squat because there's so many benefits to it. For the majority of the people who are watching this who are powerlifters, that's a third of our competition, and a lot of us are struggling to grow it. They talk about those newbie gains. When you start lifting and you just all of a sudden start getting stronger and stronger, there's a point where you're going to hit a wall. You're going to have to break through that wall. Whether it's a 400-pound squat, 500-pound squat, you got to find a way to break through that barrier. And there's a few things that you might be doing wrong, but there's one thing in particular that a lot of people are getting wrong. So when people squat, like I mentioned, it sounds simple. You bring your hips down and bring your hips up. But the whole thing about it is that you have a bar on your back, you're having to keep your feet fixated, and you're trying to get your hip joint below the knee joint. Actually, if you read the rule book, for powerlifting at least, they say there's a crease on the upper thigh that needs to go below the top surface of the kneecap. Whatever your federation tells you, you want to get below depth. It's not just a federation thing. A lot of us who go to the gym, for example, a bench press, you touch your chest and you lock it out. That seems more concrete versus trying to get the hip crease below the kneecap. But we want to hold this standard on the squat, because even if we're at the gym, we don't want to just always squat too high, because then we'll squat higher and higher. We want our squat to hit a certain depth. But when we get to that depth, there's a lot of issues that happen with the squat, trying to come out the hole, trying to hit your sticking point, fight through lockout. And a lot of us try different things to fix that. They might try variation lifts like a box squat, a pause squat, a pin squat, so many other different options as well, bands or chains. But there is one thing in particular that you are missing, and I'm going to share that with you right now. So the biggest struggle a lot of us have with our squat is we're not training explosiveness. For me, being a science nerd and working with a lot of clients and trying to help coach them up on this idea, you need to understand that contractions happen in 3 phases. Whenever you are going to attempt a lift, there's a desire of the movement you want to achieve. So for the squat, the desire is to stand up, because you could come down, miss the rep, it doesn't count. The squat only counts if you come up. During the upward phase, that's the desire. But then opposing the desire of the movement is the opposing movements. So squatting downward, whenever we squat, we unrack the weight. When we start dropping our hips down, our muscles will stretch. You have very small units of the muscle fibers called myosin and actin. Whenever your muscles undergo the undesirable part of a movement, more times than not, they stretch. So if you see my fingers right here, pretend these are the different parts of the muscle fiber. They stretch and then eventually they shorten. But when you squat down, they stretch. When you stand up, they shorten. But there is a part of those 2 contractions that is the 3rd phase. When the muscles stretch and they have to shorten, that lapse of time between stretching and shortening is called the amortization phase. And what that means is, how do we redirect our energy from stretching to shortening? Everything in this video sounds simple, right? Squatting to depth, stretching and shortening the muscle. But think about it like this. If I want to stretch and then shorten my muscle with 500 pounds on my back, that transitional phase to shortening is very hard to do. Your muscles have to be tremendously strong. So that's why sometimes people pause squat. They stretch, they pause, and then they shorten. What they're trying to do is they're trying to overload that amortization part of their lift. But nonetheless, you got the stretching, the paused period, and then the shortening. If you want to get real sciencey, you got the eccentric phase, amortization, into how long you can concentric phase the contraction when it shortens. When you watch people squat, you'll see they come down, down, and then when they come up, Maybe it's quick, maybe it's abrupt, maybe it's slow. But that transitional period from stretching to shortening is very overwhelming for the muscle because you're redirecting force. It stretches, and then when it wants to shorten, how strong are your muscles to redirect it into a shortening phase? Well, that comes back to explosive training, plyometrics. Everybody knows what those are, right? Box jumps, vertical jumps, etc. When you train explosive like that, you are causing that amortization phase to be as short as possible. So like right now, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to embarrass anybody. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to embarrass myself. But if I was to sit on this bench and then jump in the air, that's a plyometric. It's explosive. My feet will come off the floor. And I'm training how to be forceful. But when I come down and sit on the box and then come up, I'm learning to go from a stretched phase or a resting phase if I'm sitting to a concentric phase, a shortening phase. So I'm not doing it like with a normal squat where people come down and then up. The speed is slow. Plyometrics, the speed has to be insanely fast. If I learn how to be really strong on the squat, and then I add the explosive plyometrics to my routine, I'm training my muscles to not just be strong, but I'm also training them to be explosive, dynamic, and more forceful, okay? There's this concept called RFD, rate of force development. And when you do plyometrics, you're training your body how to be quicker and more transitional. So an example of how to be explosive in your next squat workout could be like this. Let's say you do your top set of squat, all right? Let's say it's a triple, okay? You did 400. What I invite you to do is after that, do 3 sets. You're going to drop the weight to 80%. So if you did 400 for a set of 3, now you're going to go 320. So that's 80%. You're going to go 320 and you're going to do 3 sets of 3. You're going to do pause squats. You'll unrack the weight, come down, pause, and then stand up. But I want you to be as explosive as possible. Now, 320 might not seem as easy, but there's a reason for it. If you get the percentage too low, like 50%, 40%, some people like that. But the problem is that it's not realistic to your actual natural squat. But my clients like to float between 80%, 70%, maybe even 65%. But I like to keep it a little bit heavier because I'm going to make you superset. So 80% of your top set, you're going to do 3 sets of 3 on pause squats. Once you're done with the pause squat, you're going to come to the bench, sit down, get your feet fixated. You're going to sit down on the box and then you're going to jump and do a vertical jump for a set of 3. So here's what it looks like. You hit your top set of 3, and then you're going to go into pause squats for speed. So you'll unrack, you'll do 3 pause squats and try to be forceful off the bottom each time. And then when you're done, walk over to a bench, do 3 seated vertical jumps, and then rest for 1 minute and 30 seconds. Do 3 rounds of that. What that's going to do over time is that's going to associate your ability with barbell to your ability with explosiveness. So as time goes on, the more explosive you train, the more dynamic you'll be when the barbell's on your back. We need to train to be explosive. Stop being a static monster and start being a dynamic and ballistic animal. I invite you to look up plyometrics, to look up explosiveness, to do sub-maximal loads for speed, explore how forceful you can make your contractions develop, and how you can really cater to that amortization phase between the stretch and the shortening of the muscle. If you like this video and want to learn more, subscribe to our channel, click the like button. I invite you guys to leave comments. You guys have been great in my previous videos. You've left a lot of good comments, a lot of good questions. We've even used some of those questions to make more videos. And that's the goal. We want this to be a great, fun environment for people to thrive, and not just powerlifting, but any kind of strength sport. So again, this is Joseph Lucero, PowerliftingTechnique. I hope you have a good day and you keep watching our channel.